In this video, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the REAPER project file for a song that I released this month. If you follow my YouTube channel, you'll know that every month, for quite a while now, I've tried to release at least one song. It's a practice that helps me to force myself to complete ideas. Often I find they're not really quite ready to release, but I do my best to get them mixed and in a decent state. And this month, the song, I've called it Turn Back to You. And so I'm just going to show you what I've got in Reaper. There's nothing particularly fancy or impressive going on here. But I've always enjoyed seeing how other people set up their projects. And so hopefully you'll find this interesting. Now, one of the ways I get started on songs is that I've got a folder of short loop ideas that I've come up with over the years, just sort of experimenting, messing around with different sounds. And sometimes I'll start something completely fresh in a month. I've got a bit more time. But if I feel like it's a busy month, which it was this month, and I've only got a few days to work on the song, I'll often turn to one of the older ideas. So this idea, I just bring up this. Actually, in my backup folder, you can see I came up with this idea back in 2022, and it was just called Prophet Keys because I was using the Arturia Prophet sound. And so if I just play my initial idea, I quite like to export these ideas to MP3 because I find that if you go back after a while and try and open them, often your plugins don't load correctly and give you the original sound. So I do recommend exporting so these ideas aren't lost. But let's just listen to the original idea. Okay, so a very simple chord progression, a couple of guitar parts and a sort of a bell lead. And what I actually ended up doing is quite rare that I will use the same chord progression the whole way through a song, but actually, as I was building this up, I quite enjoyed the way it was going. So I have ended up just keeping that simple chord progression. A number of the parts remain. So the two original guitar parts, which actually were recorded direct in on my Pod Go. So they kind of got all the effects baked in. I couldn't really change them, but they actually have remained. So that's those two guitar parts. They're actually buried quite low in the mix now, and I put some chorus on one of them. And I added quite a few additional guitar parts. I nearly decided I was going to replace these, but actually they work just fine, just adding a bit more interest in a couple of the choruses. The bell sound, I tried to keep the original melody idea, and it does semi-work as a counter melody, but I eventually decided I was making things too busy, and so the bell sound, I've kept the sound, but I just use it to double my melody in the chorus. And if I load this up, it's the Arturia Synclavier, and I'm using Baby Audio's spaced out kind of reverb and delay just to add some ambience to that. The other part that has remained right from the beginning, actually several parts have remained right from the beginning, this Prophet Keys patch, really got no other effects on it, is just doing the background for the choruses. It's almost an electric piano kind of sound. And then I used Arturia's Rhodes, stage 73, to give me a different keys sound for the first part. So if we listen to a bit of that. Okay, and then onto the drums. Now the drums, again, they kind of remained very similar to what I originally came up with, and I was using Polyplex. So if I load this up, Polyplex is part of Reactor. I actually ended up fighting a lot with this because originally I'd loaded it in Complete Control and it wasn't rendering the full UI properly, so I had to save the patch and come back to it in Polyplex. And I decided that I wanted a couple of the snare hits to have extra reverb, and so what I did was I automated this insert for reverb B as well as the main reverb. However, I found that weird artifacts were appearing in the sound coming out of this effect. I don't know what was going on, so I ended up having to render the output and then actually snip a bit further out of the rendering and put it back in over the bit that wasn't playing back correctly. And so if I just solo these drums, so it's a fairly simple pattern that I just played in myself on MIDI. You can see here, and you can also see that in a few places I've just added in a few of my own fills. But then the other big thing I did to the drums is I was actually looking to replace the Polyplex drums because I was a bit annoyed with how the plugin wasn't working properly, and I started exploring some sounds with Trias, which is a nice drum VST that I've got, and I came across this patch called Dragons Awake, which is a really reverberant percussion patch, actually, with some kind of booming sounds and some percussive stick sounds, and just really liked what that was doing. Let's just play a little bit of let's play this bit. And I liked that so much that I ended up just basically keeping that, and so let's play that over the top of the original Polyplex drums. I guess that brings me on to the bass. So for the bass, one of my all-time favourite virtual instruments, the Tal Uno LX, which is, I think, just an emulation of a Roland Juno. Very, very simple, but love the sounds that come out of this. So I just found a bass patch, and I quite often put basses through some kind of distortion. This one from Arturia I use quite a lot and try and keep it fairly subtle, but just give it a bit of crunchiness to help it cut through the mix a bit better, particularly on smaller speakers. There is actually also a cello in here that again came from the very original idea using Spitfire Audio's free labs, and so the cello plays along with the bass in a couple of places. So let's play this section here. But I think the thing that really made this song start to come together was when I used another instance of Tal Uno and found a lead sound that I liked, and this just really seemed to inspire lots and lots of ideas. So for the verse, the lead line, and then the chorus lead line. It's quite repetitive, and the one concern I had when I came up with this is that it felt very familiar to me, like I was borrowing it from somewhere else. And my best guess is that it's from an album by Tokyo Tea Room called No Rush. I listened through a bunch of songs on there, and there was one that did have a similar chord progression, but didn't fully follow this melody. So I'm kind of hoping that I haven't ripped it off somewhere else. There's another band called Made a Rose. Maybe it's one of their tracks has got this kind of sound on it. So I'll have to look out, and hopefully it's not an identical copy. But yeah, I just really liked that melody, and it felt like that verse melody and chorus melody was enough to carry this song through actually several iterations of the same chord progression. On top of that, the main thing that got added was a few guitars. So I've got these what I call wide guitars, so very hard panned left and right. I'm using Tonex, which I absolutely love for doing this kind of thing. It's very quick to get some really great sounds, and I was actually trying out the new sounds that come with the most recent update. So this Fender Twin with a overdrive in front of it I've used, and I've actually used some automation to turn on the modulation, which is a bit of chorus in a few places. I'm using room reverb, which I don't often immediately go to on electric guitar, but it felt like it worked, a fairly long room reverb. And so these two guitars, let's have a listen to them in verse 1. So that's the just single strums in the verse, and then when we get to the chorus, I go to some just palm muting. The verse 2, again, we've got some chorus and some single strums. And chorus 2, I came up with a slightly different idea, and actually the two parts I recorded, I did different things, and at first I was a bit annoyed by that. I felt like I needed to try and make them identical, but the more I listened to it, the more I actually liked the fact that the two ears are playing off of each other. So I've kept in them just doing subtly different things. And then I added one more guitar, and that was for an intro. And again, Tonex to the rescue here. One of my favourite producers of Tonex captures, Amalgam Audio. It's a really nice Marshall sound, a bit of delay, tape delay, and plate reverb. And I actually just played with my fingers to give it a bit of a softer sound. This is the intro. Noise floor is a little bit louder than I'd like there. And then on the instrumental chorus, I added a few little bits as well. And then on the outro, I did have to do a little bit of volume automation to get rid of some fret noise that was just a little bit too distracting, but it's the same. It's the same riff as the intro. They were originally slightly different, but I decided it made more sense for it to be the same riff as the intro there. And I think that is almost all of the parts. I haven't mentioned the ARPs, so I had a kind of a playful ARP sound in the instrumental chorus, lots of delay, and some modulation on the cutoff, so it occasionally kind of cuts through. But for the outro, I ended up wanting something that was a bit more muted, And so I ended up with this one for the outro. Got a feeling I filtered off some of the top frequencies on this. Okay, so I think that is pretty much all of the parts on this song. Just to talk through what's on the master channel, I tend to keep my mixing as simple as I can. So on the master channel, I decided to use the Arturia tape emulation to just add a little bit more saturation and warmth to the sound. But I do tend to turn some of the noise and wear and flutter down. It just feels a bit overkill, the defaults that this comes with. And then I tend to use Ozone for the mastering, because it just very quickly will work out what an appropriate level for the limiter is. It will try and guess at some EQ for you. I tweak this a little bit myself if I don't quite like what it's done. I tend to leave what it decides to do with the stereo image alone. And then also it tends to pick out a few frequencies that it feels need some dynamic EQ, presumably to stop certain resonant frequencies peaking out. So again, I tend to leave that alone. It's just a way of making sure that all the songs I produce have got a consistent volume. So I hope you found that helpful. Let's just play a little bit of the song in full, and then I'll leave it there. Okay, so I'll stop it there. Of course, if you want to hear the whole thing, you can also find it on my YouTube channel, and I'll try and remember to post a link.